Good morning, Polkadot, and welcome to another episode of Polkadot Anti-Scam Team Live, where we bring you key figures shaping the future of the Polkadot ecosystem. Today, we're super excited because we're going to be diving into one of the most important aspects of Polkadot, and that is governance. So to explore this, we have a really special and awesome guest, Allison Bob. As most of y'all know him on Twitter, aka Tommi Einkell, and he's from OpenGov Watch. His team just released the December 2024 governance report, and it provides some great and deep insights into the state of the decision-making in Polkadot. So we'll be discussing some key findings, challenges, and really the future of decentralized governance. How you doing, Allison Bob?
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me. Yeah, doing good. We got some important reports out, the Treasury report, the latest governance report, also a new governance initiative on a Wish for Change track. So quite a lot of things that we got done. So pretty happy that the week is coming to an end here, and we have some time to talk today.
Yeah, definitely. I've been catching up on the reports that you've put out. It looks like y'all have been busy all year, really. So, just to give a little bit more context to our viewers, Allison Bob, aka Tommi, is the lead analyst at OpenGov Watch, and OpenGov Watch is an independent initiative that's dedicated to monitoring and analyzing governance trends in Polkadot. They have some really good stuff out there. Just reading this past report, I mean, it's super informative, insightful. For anyone who has questions about OpenGov, I highly recommend checking this report out. So the latest report does shed some light on some major governance decisions, voting behaviors, and just the overall health. So without further ado, if you kind of want to give a little bit of a deeper intro to yourself, to our community, that would be very awesome.
Yeah, sure. I feel like a crypto native. Especially, I feel like I always had this in my blood and in my thinking even before crypto started. So, and especially OpenGov and this new opportunity for humans to create their own communities, societies, and build something together. So, I don't know. Where do I start? I always was a nerd. I started software developing very early. I was a software developer by job for many, many years. Got in contact with crypto in 2017 when I bought a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit of ETH, was sleeping through the bear winter, and then I woke up in 2021 and I was looking around and crypto had changed quite a bit. Before in 2017, there was a lot of promises, but nothing really was there. And then you wake up in 2021 and there's actually like tiny bits of stuff coming out everywhere. Real products, still a lot of promises, but actually real products, infrastructure. And I wake up way too late in the bull market, and I get a lot of FOMO. I look around, like what project should I go into? What project should I go into? I screen up and down the top 20 projects on CoinMarketCap, on CoinGecko, and none of the projects make sense. None of the projects really excite me. Also not Polkadot. And I do this cycle again every 2 weeks. And then on the third time when I was reading for Polkadot, suddenly it was clicking for me. And I had this epiphany of Polkadot building this system where they only build a really strong core, but they are not really opinionated about the execution layer. And basically they just want to create a system where different chains, different products, different applications can start to exist. And then it's actually a very tough battle, evolutionary battle about which protocols and products are actually going to prevail. And for me, coming from a cybernetic perspective, where I look at things in terms of the element in a system that has the most options and the most control is the prevailing system, the system that will survive and control. For me, this was looking like, okay, this is an interoperability layer that just gives everyone the option to connect, and at the same time it provides infrastructure to connect different blockchains. And so this was very attractive for me. This is why I joined Polkadot, with a background of IT, with a background of marketing, a little bit of management background. And then I was just digging in. Couldn't sleep for the first 2 nights actually, because my mind was racing so much with all the new options that are popping up. So I got really excited about Polkadot. This was in 2021, and now it's 2025, and I've been working in the space for 3.5 years, and it feels like eternity for me. And yeah, then over time got involved in OpenGov, and this is sort of the background that I'm also coming from. So I was doing marketing and IT, especially in a political organization. So it was sort of this perfect combination of how do you communicate, how do you do political communication, and how do you build IT systems. And sort of this is the center of the storm that we're in here right now.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Honestly, it's very similar, I think, to a lot of the prominent people in our ecosystem. I know it's very similar to mine as well. So I think there should be a lot of similar stories. But you've kind of made a unique. I would say you've made a unique personality in the ecosystem. You're very outspoken on crypto Twitter, and you have like everyone really respects your insight. So I think you've definitely made a name for yourself. I know I always look forward to, like, when I wake up, one of the first things I do is check crypto Twitter, as most of us do. And I'm always seeing you in there. I'm always liking your posts. I think they're really insightful. And I think overall, you provide a lot of value with your insights into the ecosystem. So it's great to have you here. That history is so wonderful. So, with you having kind of like the IT and marketing background, working with these political organizations, like, what would you say is really, like, what's the role of OpenGov Watch? Like, how do they play a big part in this ecosystem?
OpenGov Watch. Yeah, so the way we originally pitched it is we help OpenGov grow up, right? So OpenGov itself, I would consider could be seen as the brain of the ecosystem in a way. So it's where all the stakeholders come together to negotiate how do we push the ecosystem forward. And OpenGov is fairly fresh. It's right now it's 1.5 years old, and coming from my political background, you see there is a lot of political experiments, and a lot of them fail, right? And so my concern was, how can we make sure that OpenGov is a success? And I had some time to observe this in Austria. I mean, it's different in every place of the world. But for me, I was lucky enough to be part of a political organization that was actually successful. And they did this by studying the patterns of what differentiates a successful organization from one that is not successful. And so I had a little bit of an understanding of what the parameters are. And so I wanted to contribute that knowledge. And so the idea for OpenGov Watch is, be an organization, be like, it's Chip and me, but we want to help OpenGov grow up, and sort of help OpenGov find its way, and how it's shaping, and how processes are developing, in how we create checks and balances, in how we create the differentiation between the legislative aspect, so the people that are voting and making decisions, and the executive aspects, so how do we actually implement the decisions that are being made. Just be a positive force from the side, make positive contributions, and sort of be part of the journey that we're experiencing here.
Yeah, that is super insightful. I think it's a lot of people, have trouble kind of like following with governance, but like these reports that you've put out have made it really easy to kind of keep updated with like digestible content for this. So I think, but like, is that how OpenGov originally started? Like when y'all first started, y'all didn't necessarily have like a website or any, from my understanding. Do you want to go deeper into like kind of like where it started and like where y'all kind of got to now?
Yeah, sure. So Chipa and I were working for a project in the Polkadot ecosystem, and then the Web3 Foundation opened up this grant program, Decentralized Futures, with the idea of supporting projects that make a positive contribution in the ecosystem. And we both have different political backgrounds, but we both cared a lot and had a lot of discussions, and so we wanted to launch this as a project. For half a year, I was watching OpenGov from the side and wasn't contributing too much, because I was thinking OpenGov is going to figure this out all by itself. But then I realized, okay, there's too many experiences that I have made that I would like OpenGov to avoid. So we made a proposal to the Web3 Foundation with the idea of doing an analysis, like looking back what happened in the past, having conversations, listen to people looking forward, sort of making an analysis of what is everyone agreeing on, or what are the recurring conversations, and what is the strategy that is being discussed, right? So making forward-looking ideas, throw out strategies, throw out proposals, and see what is sticking, what do people want to go with, what do we remove. So looking back, looking forward, and being helpful for people. So we provide, let's make it specific. We provide free consultations for anyone who is knocking on our doors. So you go to OpenGov.watch, you can book a call. We have weekly calls, the OpenGov office hours. This is a Twitter space where you can come. Sometimes we're making a YouTube live stream. From time to time, we make videos where we educate on stuff. We run OpenGov.watch as a portal where you can get information about how do I make a proposal, how do I survive, how do I get through OpenGov and this complicated phase. So provide information for people, provide analysis. These are the reports that we're writing: treasury report, quarterly, monthly, governance report. The ongoing Google spreadsheet that just has all the referenda that are ongoing. So basically provide information to people, give them consultation, moderate discussion, because basically what we're having here is a hive mind of people that are coming to conclusions together, and we need to figure this out together, and it is a hive mind. And then making our own strategic inputs where we also bring in our opinions, our biases about how we think should move forward, and then deal with the reactions.
Wow, I didn't actually realize that y'all did like consultation and everything like that. You know, I've caught some of y'all's Twitter spaces, and I definitely read these reports for the governance. But I did not realize the consultation aspect. So I mean, y'all are kind of like an all-in-one for governance on Polkadot. This is I probably might get in contact with you outside of this the context of this show. So that's awesome to hear. You know, it's a full package. And we'll make sure to link that in our post with this. This. So from my perspective, it seems like this is a really like all-encompassing project. So like with every project, every major project that is out there, like it always comes with its own challenges. So like, what have been some of the biggest challenges that y'all have seen like running this, and and I guess the second part of that question would be, were the challenges that you saw when you first started up different than the challenges you experience now?
Yeah, it's a lovely question. So when we started out, we made a 1-year plan of what we think we can contribute. And it's basically the question you will ask yourself is, okay, imagine you want to push Polkadot OpenGov forward as much as possible as you can in 1 single year. And you don't know, will we have funding in the future and so on, right? So what's the maximum impact you can have? And so the way we phrased this is that we thought, okay, this is actually a series of projects. We are 2 people, so we have limited time. So a series of projects, and we call them governance initiatives. And so a governance initiative is a project where we say we take 2 months time, and in these two months, we focus on one specific aspect of OpenGov. Okay, so looking forward 1 year, we were thinking, okay, what's important right now is figuring out marketing, because it was chaotic back at the time. Figuring out business development, figuring out like developer experience, user experience. So basically you see a series of projects, and you also see it's moving all the time. There is moving parts all the time. So the way we arranged it with the Web3 Foundation is that we said, we're going to do these focused projects 2 months at a time. We have specific outcomes of what we do as a report, but the report at the end is not the important part. The important part is actually how do we move things? How do we bring people together? How do we elevate the knowledge that all of those people have? What actual change is happening, and how are things improving, right? And then at the end of the whole thing, there's a report, which is the deliverable. So, so what we saw at the beginning of the year was that OpenGov is shaping up, and we are having this perspective of there is an executive branch of OpenGov, which is sort of in a decentralized environment. It's not like one person saying this is going to happen, but rather we would like to describe it this way because we think this is a very practical perspective to have. But it doesn't mean that all of the positions we see are going to get filled. So it's rather basically having positive impact on those specific areas, because if you look at a traditional organization, it is having functions like research and development, operations, marketing, sales, developer relations. And so a Web3 ecosystem needs to have those functions in a decentralized manner, which is not centrally controlled. So it's much harder to organize because you need to find people for all of those things, but who is finding the people, right? So the idea that we're following is we are the sort of the free radical element that is going to where there is the biggest problem right now, and we're spending time making this area in OpenGov better. And over time fleshing out a Web3 ecosystem that is taking care of all its functions like you have them in a traditional organization, but in this new Web3 way of doing things. So this is the perspective we had. And then how much did we achieve? How much did our perspective change? We wanted to get all of it done in a single year where we visited every area in this 1 year, which did obviously not work out. We were, I think, successful in contributing to sorting out marketing. So the new marketing bounty is something we invested a lot of time in. There is a UX bounty, improving general user experience issues in the ecosystem. We looked also in business development and into other areas. And so how is the perspective changing? I would say it's mostly the same. So we're just gonna continue in terms of looking into HR now. So there's a lot of ideas for projects in the ecosystem, and there's a lot of people willing to do something. But the two elements are not clicking together too perfect, right? So this is where we want to spend time on, is creating sort of a marketplace for HR in Polkadot where we can connect people and jobs. And then last thing that I'm observing where my perspective changed a little bit is that because we have this opportunity to talk with so many people, we are accumulating a lot of knowledge, and it's sort of condensing in a way that we can start to see a more long-ranging strategic perspective. So sharing this perspective and sort of looking into strategic initiatives that go beyond departments, but are more like initiatives and specific. So for example, there is this ongoing discussion of we should push for stablecoin adoptions in specific countries, where maybe in Argentina or in Nigeria or in other countries, they are very keen on having stablecoins and having stablecoins in a wallet. But no one has the capacity to properly pick this up. There is a few people in our ecosystem that want to pick it up. So, but this would be really strategic initiatives where we could invest time and energy in, but sort of we need to get it up and running, right? So I would say the perspective is developing from, yes, we have those departments and we need to have them up and running and synchronizing. And once the basics are done, we can then look into strategic initiatives on where we want to put special attention to sort of expand our positioning in the market.
Wow. So it sounds like, y'all kind of, you started at a kind of a very small, overwatching the position. Y'all have grown into something way more strategic in nature. Something I haven't really thought of is an HR department in a decentralized environment. That's, it's kind of unheard of, but there's a lot of things in Polkadot that I would say generally are unique and, fleshed out for the most part, for decentralized projects like any crypto is. You can look around in the entire ecosystem, and I would say that there's not really anybody who has created such a decentralized ecosystem like next to Polkadot. It's one of the most unique things about it. So kind of there's a lot of things that have been missed, but in that same vein, there's a lot of things that are being done that just aren't being done in any other ecosystem. And I think, the insights that you've provided now are just, they're kind of things that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about. Especially, I remember when like the whole decentralization aspect started like going down, and, everyone was real worried that, things wouldn't be working out and, things would take time. But I think we've really proven in this environment that like we can do it. And even like with for instance, like the ambassador fellowship, they're kind of looking for these agents that you're speaking of, where like, yes, we're decentralized, and so we need these DevRel people, we need these BD people, we need these marketing people. Like they're getting them organized in a lot of manners. And I know they're taking a lot of information from it sounds like from y'all, and kind of like looking for those agents to kind of build out what OpenGov Watch is seeing, where their needs are. So I think that's a very unique and positive growth aspect that has happened over the last year. And it's just amazing to see, it fleshed out as well as it has been. And y'all are a big part of that. So I think, kind of moving on to it, we know what y'all do. We know where y'all have come from, and we know, what y'all kind of plan on doing next. But like so I guess let's get into the meat of it. Like, what is the latest report? What did y'all find out from the latest report? How are these, what are the most significant insights, I guess, would be the best way?
Yeah. So I would say two parts, and then the needs that we see. The latest governance report, what we're observing is that this general move into departments. So last year, a little bit less than 20% of all spending went into bounties and collectives. And so we like to look at these as departments within OpenGov because they have a specific mandate. There is the anti-scam bounty, there is the marketing bounty, UX bounty, DeFi and infrastructure bounty, and they have specific mandates and jobs to regulate certain things in the ecosystem. And we think it is very advantageous for the ecosystem to flesh out this department logic, because the capacity of an individual voter in OpenGov is very limited, how much time they can spend and how many different areas they can put their mind onto. So having 1,000 proposals last year in OpenGov is just too much because it's free per day. You don't have the capacity to look at 3 proposals per day if you have follow your regular job. So ideally, OpenGov would be making the high-level decisions and delegating all the details to bounties, collectives, whatever the departments are, right? So we think it makes sense to push more responsibility into bounties and departments. What it requires is that you have competent people at the spot so that the money is handled properly, that there's good project management, that there's good execution, setting the right priorities. So we see this developing very nicely. There is quite a lot of, we have a little bit over 20 bounties right now in operation. So this looks very nicely. I think this is a good base. And then on the financial side, Polkadot has been spending, we just released the treasury report, Polkadot has been spending $133 million in 2024. And it has a balance sheet of $210 million. So that's basically $150 million in cash that there is. And then there's $40 million earmarked for bounties and basically special projects where there is already an idea what to do with the money. And then there is $10-12 million in basically provided as capital and liquidity in the ecosystem. So this is the current situation. And now you can ask, okay, what are our strategic goals for the next year? Because what we are competing with is actually centralized ecosystems or more centralized ecosystems where they maybe have a technical decentralization, but not an organizational decentralization. And so what they have is they have teams of people that are very dedicated, they're very organized, and they say, this is the verticals we want to go to. We send our salespeople there, we send our business development people there. We dedicate the developer force just to take care of those people. We have a little bit of that energy coming from the Web3 Foundation and from Parity Technologies who are contributing in that manner, but they are also Web3 idealists and they don't think that Polkadot should be centralized, right? So a lot of the responsibility is actually falling on the ecosystem to sort of come up with our own ways of how we do those things. And so that means we need, everyone who participates in OpenGov is called to come up with strategic ideas and bring them forward. And so then we have to discuss and negotiate them and sort of come to a decentralized strategy by basically synchronizing our hive mind. So some of the strategic initiatives that I see and that I put forward and want to see more is, I think the original idea of Polkadot is now coming into fruition, which is interoperability. We see this with Snowbridge, and we especially see this with Hyperbridge. And Hyperbridge is right now connecting to a lot of chains. It's like, I don't know, it feels like 12 chains or so. I was putting out the tweet, and I was just copy pasting the list of all the networks Hyperbridge is connected to, and it was going crazy on Twitter. It was like having 26,000 views yesterday. So people are very hyped about interoperability because they know it has some very deep sitting extrinsic value when we connect all of those different ecosystems. And I think we should go into that even more and looking to actively engage solar chains that are built on Polkadot SDK substrate, connecting to other EVM ecosystems now that we have that interoperability, reaching out to DeFi protocols that want to start business in Polkadot, because increasingly they do this. Okay, so this is interoperability. Then we can start to see the different verticals that Polkadot is operating in. So that's, of course, DeFi, real-world assets, the fintech sector, but then we also are strong in gaming with Mythical Chain, which is quite often the number one, number two chain in terms of NFT volume, NFT transactions, user base. And then we have quite a few other angles. So strengthening our different verticals, strengthening the interoperability, and then going into the special projects. And I'm just about to write a sort of a forum post on this where I lay out some strategic ideas, adding more capital and liquidity into the ecosystem from the treasury-owned liquidity, for example. So right now it's $12 million. We could ramp that up to $100 million. Move, right? And Polkadot Treasury has the money right now and it's sitting idle. So it could be provided into the ecosystem without too much of a risk for the Treasury. And then eventually, when it needs the money to spend it, it could sort of retract it in portions. So this would be, I think, fairly risk-free for the ecosystem. And yeah, I would have to look up my list, but basically the idea is let's get more active, let's get more aggressive, and start pushing for ideas so that we can compete with the more centralized ecosystems.
Yeah, I mean, those are some amazing insights. I mean, I didn't even realize that, Hyperbridge was as connected as it was. I think there's a narrative going on with Polkadot, that it's a little bit behind, but I mean, the reality is it's ahead in a lot of ways. It's, out of all the major blockchains, Polkadot and really like Bitcoin off the top of my head are really the only ones that are like as decentralized as they are. And, this has played a narrative in some of the negative aspects of Polkadot, how people look at Polkadot. But the reality is that, I mean, this is like how the future is going to be for blockchains. This is kind of what makes a blockchain unique in the space, is that it's super decentralized. There's no central entity controlling any aspects of it. And so in a lot of ways, Parity and Web3 Foundation have been ahead of the game. And, some people can say that it is a weakness, but overall, when we have people like you and we have the right people in place, in other aspects, it really becomes a strength, because I think a lot of the, just an opinion of mine, I think a lot of the trees were missed for the forest, so to speak. Or forests were missed for the, I forget how the saying goes, but if you get my catch, it's pretty much like there was a grand kind of idea that was had, but the little pieces were kind of missed on a lot of aspects. And so this decentralization has really allowed like ecosystem agents like yourself to kind of go in and look at things from a different perspective and provide a lot more valuable insights. And I think, a centralized entity can provide for the most part. Not that like anyone's failing or anything like that, but when you have so much going on in an organization, it can get really hard to track certain aspects, and you miss some of the weaknesses, and you miss some of the strengths of the ecosystem that can allow you to, further refine the product. I used to myself, I was at Parity for a little bit on the business development team, and it was kind of chaotic at the time. It was kind of during the peak of the last run, like bull run and everything, and like everyone wanted to get people on Polkadot, and people were, it was just like it was a scramble more so than a refined like operation, I would say, in terms of getting teams on board. But now that we see that things have decentralized, the teams that we have onboarded into the ecosystem are, I would say, a lot stronger than, at first, where, parachains were, coming online and everything like that. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of strong teams that came into the ecosystem with parachains, but now I would say like things like Mythos, I mean, they're one of the top players in terms of user base. Like, you can't really beat that. Like, and they came in as Polkadot was decentralizing, not when it was very centralized. So I think there's a lot of merit in that. So, I mean, you spoke on a lot of like the insights and kind of like a lot of the trends that have kind of stuck out to you. Has there been anything like unexpected? Like you kind of had it in your head, like, hey, I think this is how it's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. But there was an unexpected kind of interpretation of things.
In a way, no. coming from politics, it's actually there was nothing really surprising so far in Polkadot for me, because I don't know, politics is a very harsh field, and I viewed it as a political thing. Sometimes people are unhappy when I view it as a too political thing, but yeah. I was already coming with a thick skin, and typically when someone, so speaking for politics now, not too much for OpenGov, but I mean, it's also true for OpenGov. If you're joining politics, there is a lot of disappointment and disillusionment that you need to go through, and you need to grow a thick skin and ideally arrive at a place where you're not negatively triggered and aggressively triggered all the time, but just understand there's a lot of bad stuff happening, and you need to come with idealism and then just keep working to make it better. And sometimes things take 5 years before they come better. I want to say this episode that we had with, let me say it like this, the most challenging episode that we had so far was this negotiation with Giotto, right? So the Giotto episode, I think a question that I heard really often was, do you think Giotto is net positive or net negative for the ecosystem? And I was really, every month I was switching positions, where in some months I said, Giotto is just bad. And then there were months where I was saying, I see a lot of good things that are coming out of Giotto being the way he is and how he contributes. I would definitely say I had a lot to learn. There were things where I very much agreed with Giotto, and there were things where I very much disagreed with Giotto. And he was a hard character to negotiate with, right? I think overall it was at least necessary to have that episode of having one actor who is able to dictate so much of or influence so much of what is happening in the ecosystem, because everyone needs to make those experiences, and we as an ecosystem need to make those experiences of how do we deal with this, do we think this is good, this is bad, and so on. And like a lot of things were started. So I think this was the hardest to navigate and negotiate, because you go through this different phases where first you like try to fight it out, and then you realize, okay, this agent is not reacting to social pressure like other people do, right? You cannot like argue with him until he folds because you have the better arguments, because sometimes he just says, I don't care, I'm gonna vote this way, right?
Yeah.
So then there is a phase of, okay, where can we build alliances and how do we still fight it out and so on. And then you figure out, okay, both of you are grown up, and it's basically sometimes you fight, sometimes you agree, sometimes you sort of try to make things happen together. And then suddenly getting hate from people when you agree on certain things with Giotto, right? Even though you maybe had like the biggest fights on Twitter, but then still at the first second you agree with him on something, then people start hating on you. So I think this was very challenging in sort of figuring out how to properly react to such a type of agent. And yeah, I'm a little bit happy and a little bit sad that he's gone now. But I think what OpenGov really needed was some calm and a feeling that things can be constructive and everyone is working to make things better. So in the current stage, I think it's good that we don't have to deal with a single whale who is creating a lot of noise, but rather have a phase where we can focus. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be phases in the future where, like, I don't know, trouble is going to wait again, or we have big conflicts. But for now, I enjoy that we can just keep grinding.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a controversial time for OpenGov. I would say, we heard about it a lot in the Discord, on Reddit, on crypto Twitter. It was very controversial, but I kind of agree with you. It was something that is needed in the ecosystem. You need to see these things, like how they come to fruition, how to handle them, and you really don't get a good understanding of how these things happen or how to handle them unless you actually go through it. I mean, it's one thing to test things out, but to actually go through the situation and it not be like, it was high stakes, of course, but I would say there are bigger stakes, that could happen possibly. I know that there have been some other controversial, proposals put forth that have really united the community in voting no, and I think Giotto was kind of like a testing ground and a stepping stone for the community in terms of getting their act together on hey, if we feel like this is going to positively or negatively affect us, then we need to rally together and make sure that either A, this goes through, or B, this doesn't go through. I can't tell you how many posts I saw on social media where it split the community, and people look at that as a bad thing, but ultimately it's a growing pain, and growing pains are always good, because what does that mean? You are growing, as an ecosystem. So it's good that a player that from a lot of perspectives had good intentions, but maybe just didn't execute it in the right way. I think it's better that we were tested in that manner than having a nefarious organization come in and trying to really mess up the ecosystem. It provided a good training ground.
Absolutely.
So ultimately I see it as a net positive. Maybe the inside of it wasn't net positive, but overall I think we came out as a stronger community and a stronger ecosystem for it. So that it's super interesting though. I did see a lot of your posts where you did agree, you disagreed, and just the nature of those posts, it was so controversial. Like people asking what are you doing, Allison Bob? You're agreeing with him, and it's just like, hey, good advice or good information is good information no matter who it comes from. So I think that's something that we all need to, we're all adults here, and it's something that we really need to take to heart. Giotto still had some good insights, and he still had some good things to say. So, I don't think that's controversial to say. Execution wise, maybe it wasn't the best, but we're past that now, and we're a stronger ecosystem. So, speaking of challenges and everything like that, we, from the anti-scam team, we've put through some proposals. We've had our ups and we've had our downs even. I think, one thing that people would be interested in hearing about are there any patterns for among the proposals that get rejected or face strong opposition that you're noticing?
That's a good question. I think phrased this way, it's the first time that I'm hearing it actually. Patterns of proposals that get rejected. I mean, it's a wide field, right? So it's a big option space of you have a lot of things you can do to get rejected. I think I'm just going to rattle off a few things that come to my mind.
Definitely.
The first thing is some people are not able to read the room or take the feedback. So, and it's a little bit different. Reading the room is some people come with very absurd proposals and they don't understand themselves that they're sort of absurd, which is a little bit a hard situation, because then people often don't give them the feedback because they think, okay, there is a crazy person coming. I better not talk with that person. And that is hard for that person because they don't get the feedback that they actually have a bad proposal, right? So, and then they try to go forward and they don't get the proper feedback. That's one situation. But you typically, how you would confront this is ask people for hard feedback and directly tell them to be harsh to you and hard to you. And ideally, you want to get the harshest feedback possible, even if it is too harsh, just so you get prepared, right? And then either you understand, I'm still going to stand my ground, or, I should rethink everything, right? So first of all, getting people in that give you feedback on is this even a good idea to propose or not? Then the second thing is, once you get feedback, how do you deal with that, right? And so this is a very clearly visible pattern is how people react to feedback. Do they completely ignore it and they say, yeah, but we're still going to do it this way? Or do they sort of try to understand where you're coming from, and are they adapting to the situation? Yeah? So this means, where do you get your feedback? Good places are to ask in a Polkadot forum, to ask on PokeAssembly, to come on AAG, and then to reach out to different people in the ecosystem, ideally the stakeholders that are directly affected by your proposal, right? Which brings me to another point, the third point. Making a proposal for something, but no one actually asked for the thing, which, I mean, you sometimes can do that if you think it's a really good idea, and at least you are very convinced. But then we had these proposals coming in where they say, we're going to deploy this on 20 parachains. And then I'm asking them, okay, do you know 20 parachains that actually want to have this thing, right? And they say, no, we didn't talk with anyone. Okay, how about you first reach out to 5 teams, get their feedback. So actually proposing something that is needed, you get feedback from stakeholders. Sometimes stakeholders just don't want a proposal, right? Sometimes it's a matter of just adapting the proposal and improving it, right? So people that are not able to take the feedback, they don't improve upon the proposal. And sometimes it just takes 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds until you got the proposal to a point where people actually agree. And then another point is not campaigning for your proposal, right? So sometimes people just think they post a proposal and then the proposal should speak for itself. But first of all, not everyone is reading the proposal. Maybe you didn't write the first page well, and if you don't write the first page well, and the first paragraph, and the first sentence, and the first word, people just drop off, right? So you actually need to write a proposal in a way that people pay attention, and even then you can't expect them to read it. So some people argue, oh, but I have social anxiety, or I'm not good at presenting, or whatever. But it doesn't matter, because you want to make the deal. You're making a proposal, right? So you need to actually fight for your proposal and make the deal. And the idea cannot stand on its own if you can't present it. Because if you cannot sell the idea to us, how do we expect you to sell the idea to your eventual users, right? So making a proposal, writing it in a way that the first page actually gives an insight, and the first paragraph tells me what this thing actually is. It's more than half of the proposals you don't know what this thing actually does after reading the first paragraph, right? And this, personally, I'm at the point where I just get triggered if I read the first paragraph and it's just buzzwords and it does not make any sense, and they are forcing you to read to the third page until they finally tell you what they actually have in mind. Or they are afraid that it's going to get rejected, and so they rephrase it and reframe it just so that it is presented in a way that appears new, but it's actually the same thing we had. And sometimes the same old thing from back then is fine if it has its own value, if it stands on its own merit. So I would say proposals that are too coded are bad. Not standing up for your proposal, not doing the campaigning, not knocking on doors is bad. And then I would say the more nuanced thing, which sometimes can lead you to fail, is if you're not too what's the English word? Not too acclimated to how the scenario is right now in OpenGov. So for example, you make a very big proposal in a single milestone, but you're a pretty unknown actor, then people are just going to say, we don't know you. We don't know if you're just going to disappear with the money. Yeah, these are a few points. We can dig into a few of them, but sort of these are the very typical ones, I would say.
So, I mean, it sounds like it's just regular, kind of like the same things that go into real politics, right? Like you said, like if you don't campaign, if you're not knocking on doors, if you're not actually going out and meeting the people, and when I say meet the people, I mean, online, of course, it's very hard to meet people globally, for these proposals, but nonetheless, like meeting the people and kind of just, getting them to support your side of the story, your proposal, it's something that we actually, even at the anti-scam team, learned the hard way, right? Like we put out a top-up proposal last year, and it got denied, and we went out and we stopped, and of course we took the feedback, right? Like we didn't get our feelings hurt. We understand that this is, this is money we're talking about. It's important to a lot of people. It's not just about, okay, well, I don't like your team or anything. Like, this is treasure. Like, it has to provide value to the ecosystem, right? And we found out that, maybe we weren't doing the best job of explaining our value to the ecosystem. And so we've really worked over the last 6 months to like really change that perception of our team. And I would say for the most part, we've been successful. A lot more team know about the anti-scam team, or a lot more of users know about the anti-scam team. They know about the work we do. And this was, done because of the good feedback that we received and the fact that we didn't get offended, right? Like, it hurt a little bit. I won't lie, but overall, you got to get past that and you got to look forward to the future. And ultimately, if you have a good idea or if you have a good value-driven, proposition, that's what it takes, and that's what people need to understand. We learned the lesson very quickly. Let's just put it that way, right?
It's true. Like, getting salty is a risky trap that some people fall to, and it just creates a bad impression. And yeah, sometimes you need to take it. I have to admit, I'm also guilty of sometimes being too harsh to people, and then always try to introspect and try to get better. But it's like still a pattern. But yeah, it's as you said, it's a political space, and so you need to expect that some people are just not going to be nice to you.
Yeah, and another fact that it's all online. I mean, some people can hide behind anonymity, and it empowers them a little bit, and you just kind of got to take it in stride, in my opinion. It's just part of the ecosystem game that we all play, right? We all want Polkadot to be successful. We want to be the best that we can be, and it takes feedback. It takes, actually putting in the work. It takes actually doing what's necessary to get the job done. And I would say there's like a lot of characters that maybe this is their first experience with that kind of stuff, right? Even if you're coming from Web 2, like, yeah, you can put you've probably gotten a few RFPs and you've probably written a few pitches or anything like that. But like, ultimately, like, you're not just selling a few people on this anymore. You're selling a whole community, and they can see it. It's not like, okay, well, if I sell these guys, then they're going to implement my thing and, the community is going to love it. No, the community has to love it from the get-go. Otherwise, you're going to have some trouble getting it passed. So it's a new experience for a lot of these people, I would say. Even for myself, writing helping write, I should say, a few proposals and just, sometimes people would nitpick things and you're like, why they got to pick me out of that? Like, you grow thick skin very quickly. Let's just say. So, I mean, we know how the process works. We know kind of like, now that we know that there are like certain things to kind of do in order to get your proposal more likely to pass, not saying this is a guarantee or anything like that, but like, you got to make sure that you're able to sell it on the first page. You got to be very detailed. You got to go campaign for your proposal. You got to reach out to the necessary networks. Do you think that this, like, would you say that, and at this point, that all this requirement, would you say that OpenGov has succeeded? Are there any flaws in it?
So far, I would actually consider it very successful. It is able to fairly responsibly manage a treasury that is currently we have $150 million in cash, because I mean, it could also all be gone now, right? It could also be, I don't know, so you always have your opinions, and sometimes I strongly disagree with certain proposals. Sometimes I agree. I would say overall we are acting fairly responsible. Of course, there's a lot of things where I see we could act better. And then OpenGov is very important to consider. It's not just the treasury, but it's also actually all this dark gov stuff around, right? So the social processes of every communication and conversation is happening around. That is sort of the decentralized answer to how you typically would have this in a centralized manner, where there's a boardroom and then decided, and then the decisions go top to bottom. And so the decentralized answer is that you have a lot of stakeholders and network participants and agents in different chat rooms, in like networks of networks being connected, sort of processing all of the information, talking with each other, and making all of this happen. I'm fairly happy with how this is happening in Polkadot, and I think one big reason is also the values that Polkadot represents and that resonate with a lot of the people that are active here in the ecosystem. Every ecosystem could also be seen as the sum of its values, or the values dictate how the technology is going to develop. For example, how decentralized is it really? And I think there is a lot of people that are aligned roughly on the values, which is a great thing. And then it's a constant evolution, right? So there can be other ecosystems coming forward where some of our people go to, and they sort of bring ideas of open governance there, and then it's going to be a completely new thing. OpenGov itself is going to innovate. Kusama and Polkadot OpenGov could develop in different ways. So I think evolution is still coming, but so far we're standing, we're differentiating, we're getting better. We're getting better in our communication, in our technical differentiation, in the way how we acquire data, how we do business development, how we do software development, how we treat proposals, how we judge them. So I think in almost all ways we're getting better. So personally, I'm very happy, and it's still very every day. I'm happy to wake up on this journey and be part of it.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of growth in this, I would say. Ultimately, I feel the same way. Like I do see it as being successful. We've had a few tests already where the community has really come through and proven that, hey, if we don't like something, we're gonna vote against it. And I think that right there alone is a big testament to, like, yeah, sometimes people complain about turnout, but ultimately, if there is something that the overall community for Polkadot feels that is negative, they will turn out for it. Now, only if we could get that kind of, participation in everything, right? That would be great. But it's hard to, it's hard to motivate people. And I would say, we just got to look at it from your perspective that, things are growing and things it's still, I would say we're still in the infancy a little bit, right? So we have to think about it from that perspective. So, it's, we can both agree that it's been successful. So what are you kind of expecting in 2025 for OpenGov?
Yeah. So the observation that I was making is that there's bull markets and there's bear markets. What a bull market brings is typically a lot of capital, also a lot of projects and a lot of people. And so ideally you have an ecosystem that during a bull market is as sticky as possible. And in the past, this idea only has been projected onto capital and say, okay, let's be as sticky as possible for capital. But actually, one of the scarcest resources we have in crypto overall is people, right? So I think one of the things we should focus on is becoming as sticky as possible for people, which means creating an attractive environment where people like to be in, where they like to try things out, where they like to participate in OpenGov, where they say the vibes are good, there is a lot of opportunity and potential. So being sticky for people, and that means like working on our culture, working on the way how OpenGov is hiring people in a way, or contracting partners. This is a sort of an internal thing for OpenGov. We talked about street strategy before, but I think it's important for OpenGov to be strategic, to come to strategic conclusions. So use this instrument of wish for change also to sort of start fleshing out more consensus, more ideas. I think the partners are gonna come along fine, and then it's about how do we spend the available budget and treasury resource this year. And I would like to see more intentionality going into business development related activities, into sales. So basically attracting people from Web2, people from other Web3 ecosystems, completely like traditional verticals, growing DeFi, and so on. And I think one important, so this is ecosystem development, this is one angle, and then the second angle is, I think, mindshare. So mindshare overall in crypto is something where Polkadot is not good at the moment. And I think this is something that we very intentionally have to focus on. And this can be on many different levels. This can be on the how do we reach the OGs, how do we reach the degens, how do we reach investors, how do we reach businesses, how do we reach governments. So this is something to work on many different angles. For example, the situation in the United States is it's very interesting right now. There is a lot of, let's say, motion. Things are coming into motion, and we have to consider what are the risks for us and also what are the opportunities for us. You know, for example, if there is a big unlock of a labor force that is suddenly looking for new jobs because things are changing, this is also an opportunity for them where they will be looking in, okay, how can the future look like? How can the future of my job look like? Or the future of technology look like? And so I think making an interesting offers here, allowing businesses to maybe explore new opportunities to join Web3, and integrating this into their businesses and sales practices would be good. Yeah. So I would say strategic intentional, be a little bit aggressive and think about, okay, how can we actually capture parts of the market? Also, for example, in the last years, and I think this was a phenomenon across most ecosystems, that they were bleeding projects into Ethereum and into Solana, right? And you always only see it from your perspective where you say, oh, we are bleeding, like people projects. But there's one interesting observation to make, which is there is now a lot of restaking ecosystems. And restaking is basically I build my project and I rent my security from somewhere, right? So they're building on sort of like a roll-up infrastructure tech stacks. Now, my prediction is most of these restaking ecosystems are going to collapse because there is only place for so many restaking ecosystems, right? So when they are collapsing, where do they go to? And I think this is a positioning where we should actually be making them an offer and say, hey, we offer very affordable block space. We offer you the opportunity, like we are made for you to integrate. And we've been on the block for 5 years now, and we can actually like offer to secure your blockchain. We can give you very fast finality. We can give you very good throughput. We give you access to USDC, USDT, wrapped Bitcoin, wrapped ETH, and can be on your chain in 6 seconds. Right? And actually like start formulating these offers and be aggressive and tell people, we built all of those stuff. You don't need to wait for it on another ecosystem. It's actually here.
Wow, you definitely sold me as if I wasn't sold already. No, those are really insightful. It's a really insightful observation that you made. You know, something about the restaking ecosystems. It's not something that I've really have looked into myself. You know, more so, you know, the way that I operate in the ecosystem is with community, with the anti-scam team and everything like that. And, you know, there's a lot of truth in what you say, like mindshare. You mentioned that it's like a big thing that we need to win in 2025. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I totally agree with. The mindshare for Polkadot hasn't been the greatest. And, you know, if we can start to change up the narrative a little bit within crypto Twitter, you know, online and everything like that, I think it really stands to provide a lot of value and help people see the how the ecosystem has grown here in Polkadot. I see a lot of the same old narratives that played out in 2021, you know, 2022. It could have been true back then, and it still gets brought up today, but it's so different now. It's a different, you know, although it's not fully live, like it already feels like Polkadot 2.0 is like here because things have changed so much, you know?
Yeah.
So it's, 100%. I think this is something, you know, that I myself am looking into. I know it's not really part of the anti-scam team, but there's other efforts I also take part in. And this is something, you know, that I find very valuable to solve. So yeah, I think there's a lot that we agree on there. So, you know, we see how we think that OpenGov will transform. We think that there will be teams, you know, coming in that, you know, a lot of things will be changing. And with that change, we are positioned to really kind of take advantage of that. So like with changes being brought up, do you see any structural changes or anything like that to governance happening?
Yes, actually, yes. So there is one big change coming up in Polkadot, which is Polkadot Hub. And so, I mean, Polkadot Hub is sort of our umbrella term for the basic features that are provided by Polkadot, like having DOT, USDT, USDC, so basic native assets. having access to staking and governance. Now, the thing is, governance now will be moving to Asset Hub. So this dedicated chain where we will also be having smart contracts. And what that means is that now in the future, everything that happens in governance can also be targeting a specific smart contract as an account. And that means if you have a DAO written as a set of smart contracts, we can now completely change the way how we think about departments in Polkadot. Because right now we talk about bounties and we talk about collectives. But these are sort of, if you look at it, they're a little bit historical concepts, because a bounty was originally, we want to have this thing done, and so we spend money on this. So I would say the anti-scam team is more in the traditional interpretation of the bounty. But then there are more modern bounties where they say, we actually already know who is going to do it, and we already know exactly what to do, and this is basically just the money we have for it. So the definition has become a little bit more vague, and the word bounty doesn't fit anymore. So this is why we call it departments, or like a few of us are calling it departments. Now, when you have smart contracts on Hub, and you have governance, and it can direct like money or certain powers to smart contracts, you can have bounties as DAOs or smart contracts. You can have the collectives, and you basically don't need to write all of that as a Paladin substrate or Polkadot SDK. You can have it written as smart contracts, and it allows you to have completely new things. You could have Chaos DAO, Permanence DAO, all of these community DAOs represented as smart contracts, and delegate voting power to them. So suddenly you give more power to community DAOs to be represented on chain as a set of smart contracts, as applications. You could create embassies for the parachains where suddenly they have a representation on Hub that is maybe a little bit bigger than just like have an account there. So I think there's all kinds of things you can suddenly do once you have smart contracts that are interacting with Polkadot governance. And I think the big benefit of Polkadot OpenGov is quite a bit of assets under management and quite a lot of people participating. So it's one of the most vibrant, or maybe the biggest, most vibrant community DAO governance system that you have in crypto overall. There is maybe DAOs that have more assets under management, but I would say in terms of how many people are participating, Polkadot is the biggest DAO on the planet. And so now throwing smart contracts on top of that is, I think, a really interesting and exciting prospect where you could see people just experimenting and coming up with new ways on building sub-DAOs or interactions.
Wow, yeah, these are things that I haven't even taken into consideration myself. It's like you said, it's the biggest DAO in the world, and people are gonna want to experiment once these come online. It just makes it seem that we have a lot to be excited about in 2025. This is probably one of the most exciting times that I know I've been in the ecosystem. Just a lot of things are changing. We're getting more in line with, I say, the bigger picture. Whereas, I would say in the past, it's kind of been focused on just very limited interactions, I would say. Now it's starting to really spread. And a lot of the new ideas are really like picking up steam. And I think this is nothing but positive for our ecosystem. I'm super excited about 2025, honestly. So, I mean, we know how Polkadot's going to change. We know how governance is going to change. How is OpenGov Watch planning to change this year? Are y'all going to be, do y'all have anything that y'all can talk about in terms of like, you're going to continue your work, obviously, but like, how do y'all see yourselves changing this year?
Yeah. It's a little bit more of a vague feeling right now because, so first of all, we simplified a little bit of the contract structure, or the grant structure we have with the Web3 Foundation. In terms of last year, everything was much more defined in much more detail. And this year we made a proposal where we say, okay, you have seen us work, and you see we take a little bit of freedom and we try to make as much impact as possible, put that within that thing. So what we've agreed now for this year is to basically, we have one focused initiative every month. And this allows us to change the focus more often and to react much more flexibly. And we also didn't make specific promises because last year, half of the time we had to change focus because other things were becoming more important, and you don't always know how the situation is developing. because sometimes people suddenly turn their attention somewhere and a problem is getting fixed or another problem is popping up. So we have a little bit more freedom in how we're acting. And I would actually like to zoom out even further this year and spend more time on the strategic level of setting up projects. And last year, we tried to do a lot of the things on our own. For example, like go into a bounty and then spend half a year in a bounty to sort of make it work. But this eats up a lot of our time. And so we realized, because people are one of the bottlenecks, we actually want to get this hiring process done, because the idea is if we can attract more people into the ecosystem and dedicate them to those jobs, we get a lot more stuff done, right? So right now we're extracting all of that knowledge that we gathered in the bounties into a bounties best practices guide. So maybe we can also share it with you, and you have some experiences to share, and then sort of go from there and start like organizing projects on a higher level and try to find people, recruit people that are willing to do them.
That would actually be amazing. I know and the anti-scam team was like one of the first, teams out there to do a bounty. And it would be so lovely to have a guide, right? Like we were kind of just, trying to figure things out on our own. We didn't really have much help. We got to ask questions, and we got some really good insights from a lot of great people, Web3 Foundation and within the Polkadot community in general. But like overall, there was no guide out there, and we had to figure it out, and it was really hard. I think that kind of makes the whole bounties thing intimidating for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, to have the guide and to be able to like kind of read up and have a format and everything that just shows you, it's not that intimidating. And especially if you have a team, right? If you have a team of good people, it really limits how intimidating it can be, because you have support. But having a format and having a guide and being able to have a team, I mean, these are three things that would really, I think, bring everything together for anyone looking to write a bounty about anything. So that's super exciting, actually. I would definitely love to take a look whenever it's live, or if you need any input from us as well, from the anti-scam team, we would love, because now we feel a little bit like we're professionals on it, right? Like we know how to do bounties, we know how to do a lot of things. So yeah, that's super exciting. I can't wait to see how OpenGov Watch changes this year. Looking at the time, it does seem like, I'll tell you this, if you can talk an hour about governance, that means that there's a lot of things going on. So it's a really great time to be a part of the Polkadot governance in 2025. A lot of things are changing. A lot of things are going to be growing, and a lot of things are going to be happening for this year. So I want to thank you, first of all, Alice and Bob, for coming on the show. You've provided really good insights. You've made governance exciting. And I cannot wait to see what 2025 holds for y'all. So just to let everyone know, this has been one more episode of Polkadot Anti-Scam Team Live. I do want to thank you, Tommi, again, just for sharing your insights with us. You've been a wonderful guest. So, the Polkadot Anti-Scam Team, we are a group of Polkadot community members who protect and combat all forms of scam, but we also want to provide some information, and we want to provide insights for people who are coming in, and I think this is a great medium to do that. So thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the post, and follow us on our website for more information, and social media channels for more information, content and updates about Polkadot ecosystem, and to stay up to date with the scams that are going on in the ecosystem. So with that being said, be safe, everyone, and I hope y'all have a great day.
Thanks.